now that we have covered the basics of UI, we can work on a pretty level transition. We already have a level transition, but it doesn't look very good. So let's make this a bit nicer. Basically what we are going to do, we're going to take a canvas layer, a color rectangle, and an animation player to create a transition. We are fading to black when we are leaving a level, and we are fading from black to a transparent color once we are entering a level. All of this will also be auto-loaded into every scene, so it is easily accessible. I want to start by creating another scene, and this scene has to be, once again, a canvas layer. That way it's ignoring the camera. This I want to rename right away to a transition, let's call it transition layer. The first node we're going to add is going to be a color rectangle. This color rectangle is going to get a black color, and I want it to cover the entire window. And with a control node, this is quite easily done. Cool, with that, we have a transition layer. This I want to save right away inside of globals, and let's call it transition layer, the name works. And now inside of project settings, there we have auto load. I want to add not a script, but a whole scene, which Godot is perfectly happy with. If I now open this, we have a transition layer name, which is perfectly fine, so I want to add this one as well. If I now run the game, we are getting a black screen, and that is because you can see it under remote. We have globals and then a transition layer, and this transition layer is pure black right now, so everything else is going to be black as well. And note here as well that this transition layer comes before the outside level, but still inside of the game it's on top of it. You could change that, but I do want to keep it because later on the transition layer has to be on top of the outside level anyway. So let's change the transparency. The way we will be doing that is by adding an animation player. This animation player is going to get for now a single animation. I guess we could call it fade to black. We have to add one track for a property. We want to cover the color rect node, and in there I want to get the modulate property. We have to add two keys, one at the beginning, and this value should be purely transparent. And then at the end, we want to add another key, and this one should be pure black. So pure black with full transparency. That way, if I play the animation, we are fading to black. So this is working really nicely. Once again though, we have to figure out when to play this animation. And for that, I'm going to add a script to the transition layer. This one can be empty, and I want to create it. And now I want to create a function that I call change_scene. This one is going to get one argument that I called target. And the value for that is going to be a string. Also, to be a bit more consistent, the return value for this function should be void. Once we are calling this function, I want to get my animation player and then play the animation fade to black. After the animation is done, I want to get the tree and then call the method change scene to file and pass in the target. Why that is useful? If I hide the animation and go, for example, to the outside.gd file. Right now, we are simply changing scene to file, and this works so far. But this is not what I want to do anymore. So instead, let me copy the target and get rid of all of this. Instead, I want to get the transition layer, and then on that, run change scene. And I realized I didn't save the transition layer. So now if I save it and go back to the outside level, if I now type change_scene, Godot should be predicting it. In there now, I want to pass in the target. This is almost going to work. If I now run the entire game, we are still getting pure black. And that is because if I go back to the transition layer, by default, the value for the color rectangle is a pure black. This is not what I want. I want to set the transparency to 0. So that way, if I run the game, we can see the actual game. But now, if I go into the transition area, we are still not seeing anything. The reason for that is that once we're entering this area, we are starting to play the animation, but we are immediately changing the scene, so the animation doesn't actually matter. For that, we have to learn one new concept, and that is called await. Await does what the name implies. It awaits another kind of event. For example, an event we could be looking for would be the animation player, and then animation underscore finished. So we want to play the animation, then we want to wait for the animation to finish, and then we want to change the scene. If I now run the game and I walk into there, okay, this didn't exactly work. But you can see, if I go in there, the player stops, and after about a second, we are transitioning. So now, at the very least, we have a delay. And the reason why it didn't work, if I go back to the scene, this color rectangle always has a pure transparency, but this shouldn't be the case. I want this to be actually visible. With that, the animation player is actually going to show this modulate. So now if I run this and move in there, we are actually fading to black, but now we have loaded the other scene, but we are not fading from black to a transparent color again. But that we can fix quite easily. And there are actually two ways of approaching this. The first one would be inside of the animation player. I want to add a new animation, and let's call this one reveal. For this one, once again, I want to get a property track, get the color rectangle, get the modulate property, and for this one, I want to get a key that should be pure black by default. So I want this to be completely black. And then after 1 second, or whatever amount of time you want, I want this to be completely transparent. Once we have the animation, I can look at the script again, and then get the animation player and play the reveal animation. If I have all of that, I can see it in my animation player. So I am moving from pure black to purely transparent. And then inside of fade to black, I'm doing the opposite, which is pretty much exactly what I want. So now if I am trying all of this, we can see the game. I can move in there. We have a transition. And now we are revealing the other level. And this should also work. Right now it only works in one way, but at least this way, it is working really well. Which means there's only one more thing to do, an exercise. Instead of playing this reveal animation, we could simply play another animation backwards. And what I want to play backwards is fade to black. So if you look at the animation player, we basically have from transparent to black, and then from black to transparent. Which means if we reverse one of these animations, we get the other animation. Both approaches here would be fine, and let me actually test all of this. Now we still get a level transition. So this is working just fine. Cool. For this part, the exercise is going to be quite easy. I want you guys to play the transition when the player is leaving the inside level. All we have to do is go to our scripts, and I want to look at not outside, but inside.gd. Currently, we're getting a packed scene, and this is not what I want anymore. Also, I want to extend the window and get rid of all of this. Instead, I want to have the transition layer, and then change scene. I think I called it. Instead of transition layer, change scene. Yes, this one works. This one wants to have the target node, and I think the best way to approach that one is to simply drag it in from the scenes. So in scenes, we have the levels, and I want to go to the outside scene. So I can paste this in there, or rather drag it in there, and now we should be good to go. Let's try it. So I can go into the inside area, and if I now leave it, we are going to the outside area. Let's try it again. And all of this is working just fine. Perfect. So with that, we have much nicer level transitions.